If you've recently started using an autoimmune paleo or any style of elimination diet to help you out with your thyroid and gut symptoms, you're probably asking yourself the same question that most people ask, which is, when can I have some of my favorite foods again? Well, the answer is going to be a little bit different from person to person, but to help you guys out with that, I wanted to teach you today the food reintroduction process that I use with many of my patients after we've made some of these dietary changes. To better understand how that works, we're going to talk about, should you start out with an autoimmune paleo style diet? What does the actual reintroduction process look like? And also, what can our expectations be for symptoms after we start to reintroduce foods? And of course, I hope this is a topic that's useful and helpful to you. And I make these kinds of videos every single Thursday, so if you like this kind of stuff, remember to subscribe to the channel and also ring the bell. I really do appreciate the support. My name is Dr. Bodle, and I specialize in helping women with Hashimoto's and low thyroid to lose weight and improve their energy naturally. And if you've watched any of my stuff before, you know how important I think it is to make sure that our diet and nutrition are on point to help out not just with thyroid conditions, but with any sort of health challenge. It doesn't always fix everything, but it definitely stacks the deck in our favor. The question becomes, if we have an autoimmune condition like Hashimoto's, do we need to follow a diet like autoimmune paleo to help us out with some of those symptoms? Well, it's a little confusing because autoimmune's in the name, so you would think that those things should go together, but it's not always the case. We've talked about this many times before, but whenever you're making your nutritional choices, there's a couple things that you have to keep in mind. The first is that no matter what framework you choose, there's going to need to be individual modifications that you make for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is no one-size-fits-all diet, and it's going to require some tinkering and testing to figure out what works best for you. Additionally, all of our nutrition is going to be on a bit of a sliding scale. So you've heard me say before that I recommend everyone adopt more of a whole foods diet, avoiding some of those processed foods, and that should help you out in a number of ways. But from there, we're going to have to be more or less restrictive depending on things like your health history, what sort of conditions you've been diagnosed with, and also how long some of this stuff has been going on. So a great way to look at it is if you're someone who's having a bunch of different food reactions and it's really hard for you to tell where it's coming from. Sometimes my patients will say, it seems super random to me. I can't tell what foods are causing what sort of reactions. Then you're likely going to need to be more restrictive in the beginning. That doesn't mean that every food that you take out of your diet is necessarily problematic for you. Just look at it like kind of setting a new foundation or going after it with a clean slate. Once we kind of settle things down, then from that point, that's where the reintroduction comes into play, and we can actually assess which foods work for you and which foods don't. But before we get to reintroduction, many people will ask me, how long do I have to follow my new nutritional choices until I start seeing improvements and I can start to add some of these foods back in? And what I usually tell people is that 30 days is a great period of time to assess this stuff. Now, there's a couple things that I want to note here. If you choose a diet that is appropriate for your body, that supports your physiology well, it shouldn't be 30 days of misery and then suddenly on that 30th day, the lights turn on, angels come down from the heavens and start singing to you and everything starts to feel better again. Health is more of a progression, and so we should start to see changes within the first few weeks if it is a diet that fits your needs. From there, you'll continue to see improvements and progress all the way up to that 30-day mark. 30 days is just a good time period to assess the changes that you've made and be able to make any modifications that are necessary. Additionally, and I think this is something that we all know, 30 days is not enough time to get rid of 20 years of chronic health conditions. It's enough time to see changes, but it doesn't mean that you're entirely healed. So once you get to that point, this is why we reassess and we start to make some new decisions for how we want to go about things. But reintroduction can be done at this time if we're feeling better and noticing improvements in our symptoms. We just want to make sure that it's not something that we do too early or slows down some of our progress. So to quickly recap, not everyone with autoimmunity needs to follow AIP. But if you have a number of chronic symptoms and it's really hard for you to tell what foods are working for you and which ones aren't, then doing a more restrictive diet like AIP can be hugely beneficial. And if you want some more details on that, I will link for you one of my videos that I've done in the cards above on choosing the right diet and some of the differences between something like AIP and paleo. Additionally, 30 days is a great window of time to make some of these changes with the goal of seeing improvements in how you feel. Once we do that, then we have a better backdrop to judge things off of when we start doing reintroduction. So now that you've made your dietary changes and you're feeling better, how do we go about reintroducing foods? Well, the first thing that we need to know is that there is going to be a difference in timing depending on your body and the food that you're reintroducing. Meaning that some foods are going to cause an immediate reaction and some foods are going to cause a delayed reaction. The immediate reactions are easy. Think having like bloating or diarrhea immediately after having a food. The delayed reactions are a little bit harder, which is why we have to be methodical in our reintroduction, and they can cause symptoms 1, 2, 3, or 7 days down the line. And people often ask, what sort of symptoms do I look for to know that these foods aren't working for me? And I always tell them, whatever symptoms you had at the beginning of your health journey. So if you were dealing with fatigue or headaches or skin issues or anxiety or gut issues, whatever it might have been, and that got better with your dietary changes over the 30 days that we recommended, and now you're bringing foods back in and you're starting to see those things creep back into your life, then that is a great sign that those foods are not working for you. The other thing that we need to keep in mind is just because a food was problematic for you 30 days ago doesn't necessarily mean it's a problem for you now. It still can be, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. The whole goal of these nutritional changes is that you're improving your thyroid function, you're improving gut function, you have lower levels of inflammation. And when that happens, that allows your body to be more tolerant of a wider array of foods. This means that you should still test out some of those questionable foods so you can at least gauge the response and make better decisions for yourself moving forward. But to identify any potentially problematic food, whether it's causing an immediate or delayed response, here's what you're going to do. You are going to pick one food. One food. Do not choose a bunch of foods. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen this happen, and if you've maybe done this before, you can let me know in the comments below. But many times people go through all this hard work to do some sort of elimination style diet, and they get to that 30-day mark and they're so excited about the success they've had, and suddenly they're having a whole bunch of foods that they're not used to having. Then when they feel poorly the next day, it's really hard to say, where is that coming from? So you're going to pick one food and you're going to eat it 2 to 3 times over the next 3 days. What that does is it really loads and challenges the system. So if there are any reactions or weaknesses in regards to that food, we are going to know about it. If you start eating a food and you're having that immediate kind of extreme response, you don't need to continue to eat it for the next 2 to 3 days. Having that right away is enough of an indicator that it doesn't work for you. And although I think sometimes people feel, maybe they're trying out something that they really like and they feel sad about that response and they think, oh, if I keep eating it for the next few days, maybe I'll overcome that. In my opinion, I really think that the proof is in the pudding if we eat something and we get bloating that makes someone look like they're 9 months pregnant, and they definitely aren't at that time. So 3 days is the maximum window for reintroducing these foods, but that doesn't mean you have to continue through the entirety of those 3 days. So if you're reintroducing a food and it makes you feel poorly in some sort of fashion, remember, it could be any sort of symptom that you dealt with before is now reappearing, then you'll want to take 24 to 48 hours for things to calm down and have some of that inflammation subside. Once you do that, you can then move on to the next food. However, if you feel fine after those 3 days and you don't have any issues, then you can add the next food the next day, and you can continue to eat the food that you just added. If your body negatively responds to a recently reintroduced food, that doesn't mean that you can't have that food for the rest of time. What it might mean is that your body is still in healing mode. Remember, we said that 30 days is enough time to see changes, but it doesn't mean that everything's fixed. And you still might not tolerate that food at this point in time. What I would recommend is putting that food to the side for the next 2 to 3 months and then trying to reintroduce. And that takes us to our next and final point, which is what should our expectations be for this reintroduction process, and how can that inform decisions down the line that will allow us to optimize our health? Now, I think doing a reintroduction process can be a great thing. It provides us a little bit more diversity in our diet. It allows us to have a bit more balance, and if there are certain foods that we really react to, it helps us to be able to navigate around those either when we're cooking at home or if we're eating out somewhere. But some people may need to be on a more restrictive diet for a longer period of time because of that healing process that we just talked about. And so when it comes to the reintroduction, there's a few different things that we can expect during that month, which will allow us to make decisions for whether we need to reel things back in or whether we can continue to progress forward and add more foods. And this is how that works. There are essentially four main possible outcomes. And the first one is, at the end of the month of reintroduction, you're still feeling good. You're still seeing improvements, which is obviously the most important thing. But as you look back at the foods that you added, none of them caused you any issues, either immediate or delayed. And if you want to continue to add some more foods to your repertoire, you can continue to do that at this time. The second possibility is also a situation where you're feeling good at the end of your reintroduction month. However, you will have noticed that some of the foods that you tried did fine for you and others did not. You can also continue to reintroduce new foods, but you're going to want to avoid the ones that cause you problems and potentially wait until 2 to 3 months later before you add those back in. The third possibility is a situation where you don't feel better at the end of the month. Every food that you try seems to cause some sort of irritation, and after 30 days, the compounding effect of all those foods that don't work well for you has led to you feeling worse than when you started. You're going to want to stop your reintroduction, remove all the foods that cause you issues, and go back to square one. Your body may just need some more time to heal, and there's nothing wrong with that. The last possibility is also you feel worse at the end of the month, but you didn't have any overt reactions to any of the foods that you added. However, sometimes the accumulation of all these foods that we removed can be enough of a stress on the body to cause sort of a low-grade irritation or inflammatory response, which can perpetuate some of the symptoms that you're experiencing. Again, you'll want to reel things back in, remove the foods that you've added, go back to your initial nutritional plan, and give yourself another month of healing and repair before you start to add any additional foods back in. But here's the most important point. At the end of the day, we want to use diets like autoimmune paleo to help us heal and feel better. But they're also there to provide us knowledge and understanding to how our body responds to these different foods. Once we know what that actually looks like, then the decision is up to you. Knowing that allows you to opt in to your health and to your future. And many times people are stuck in this cycle where they don't feel well, they don't know what foods are causing their symptoms, and that can make it very difficult to be in control of your life. However, once you maintain or achieve that control, then if you want to have a special treat periodically and you know how that makes you feel, but you're willing to do that because it's part of your happiness, of your culture, of your family's tradition, whatever it might be, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're someone who says, you know what, I know how that makes me feel and I want to feel my best all the time. Therefore, I'm going to avoid that stuff completely. There's also nothing wrong with that. But in either scenario, you just got to make the decision that works for you. The decision that helps you to maximize your happiness, keep you sane and keep you accountable, and allows you to be successful with the way that you feel long term. But that's all for today's video. I hope that you found it useful and helpful. If you have any questions, you can leave them for me in the comments box below or send me a message on social media. The links for that are in the description box. Also, if you're interested in working with me one-on-one, the best way to start that process is by sending me an email at contact@seattlethyroidhelp.com and request a free consultation. Consultations are really easy. All it is some time for you and I to sit down, discuss what's going on with your health, and determine if we can be a good fit to work together or not. If you want to grab my free download, that's also in the description box. It's Electrolytes for Hashimoto's and Keto, and it will provide you a recipe that you can make at home. That way you are best supporting your electrolytes and therefore making sure that your energy, your muscle function, your brain function is all doing really well for you. But I hope that you guys are having an amazing week and are experiencing a ton of success. Thank you as always for the support, and if there's anything that you need, feel free to reach out. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend. My name is Dr. Brad Bodle, and I'll see you guys next Thursday.